Hi, this is video number 3 in a series of videos about NuTone Apartment House Entry Intercom Systems, specifically the Model 478, or what's called the System 4 intercom system. If you haven't watched video number 1 and video number 2, I suggest you do so. They give you good overviews. Video number 1 shows how the most basic of 478 systems are wired. Video number 2 shows how a 2-entry building with 2 entrance directories would be wired. And this is the first video in basic problem solving for common problems with entry intercom systems. So what we have here on the whiteboard is a very simplified drawing of a very simplified system. To not make it overly complicated, I have pared it down to the bare minimum for today's problem. One of the most common calls that we get about apartment house intercom problems are the tenants in the building cannot speak with the people at the entrance. There is no communication back and forth, and the question is always posed, what could be wrong with it? Well, there could be a lot of things wrong with it. However, I usually choose to go with the simplest of problems first, and then we can always move up the ladder to more complex problems. So here in our example system, we have the least amount of equipment possible to make a 478 apartment intercom system operate. We have one N485 apartment intercom speaker. We have one entrance directory for what is apparently a 5-unit building, and we have down here one 478 control amplifier. The control amplifier is drawn smaller than the other 2 items because it's not the topic of today's most fundamental of problems. We're looking for a simpler solution than my amplifier must be bad, because that's what everybody always wants to think. If you review how a 478 system operates, it's very simple. A visitor comes up to the entrance, they push the button for apartment number 1. It creates a call tone which is heard in the apartment speaker here. It's also heard at the entrance directory, and then the tenant of the building can either talk or listen to the person at the entrance and then choose to unlock the door if they choose to. I didn't draw in the door release, I didn't draw in the door release switch, because today's video is about lack of communication, not about lack of anything else. So if you look at this, the way a system like this would be wired, it's actually pretty straightforward. But straightforward doesn't always mean simple. So I'm going to draw this in without anything being terribly specific, because it's not really related to the topic at hand. Basically what you have are a whole lot of wires that connect the apartment house intercom system down to the amplifier, and a whole bunch of wires that connect the entrance directory down to the amplifier also. For the most part, if you're working on a building that you suspect has wiring problems, you have bigger problems than I can probably address in a video, at least for today. But for most fundamental problems, wiring is not usually the biggest issue. Usually it's something simpler than that. So let's think about and look at what the most fundamental aspect of any intercom system is. Any intercom system implies that there's communication between one location and another location. In this example, it's communication between the speaker in apartment number 1 and the entrance directory down on the sidewalk. To allow that communication to happen, you have to have many things in good working order. You need an intercom station that's in good working order, you need an entrance directory that's in good working order, and you need a control amplifier to control the conversation and switch directions of the conversation at the appropriate time. Most of the time, control amplifiers are not the biggest problem in the world, because they are very long lasting. If you're the property owner of a 5-unit apartment complex and the person in apartment number 1 contacts you and says, hey, I can't communicate with the entrance anymore, I missed my pizza delivery the other night and I'm kind of cheesed off about it. The first thing you should do once you get done listening to the tenant's complaint about that is you should contact the other 4 tenants in the building and ask them if they're experiencing problems also. If all 4 apartments are experiencing the same problems, then you have a system-wide problem, as compared to if only the tenant in number 1 is having a problem and all other 4 units are working correctly, then you have a problem that's specific with apartment number 1. And that would be usually either a problem with the speaker itself, which we'll address in a later video, or it could be a wiring issue, which we'll also address in a later video. But for today's video, we're going to make an assumption, as in many buildings, that when you contact the people that live in apartments 2, 3, 4, and 5, they all tell you, oh yeah, we've been having problems with that for a long time, because they never bothered to call and let you know, because they're not the complaining type. Anyway, so if you have a problem with all 5 apartments having lack of communication, the first thing you would want to do is look for a single source where that problem could originate from. So for communication to happen back and forth between any apartment station, say apartment number 1 and the entrance directory down on the sidewalk, you have to have 2 speaker cones that are in good working condition. And the thing to think about with speaker cones are, in all of these types of systems, because they are fairly simple systems, the speaker cone acts in 2 different ways. When you push the switch on the apartment station on the N45 into the talk position and you're talking into the speaker is actually acting like a microphone, because it's picking up the sounds of your voice, and then at the entrance where the pizza guy is waiting, the sound comes out and it's acting as a speaker. However, when the tenant in the building moves the control switch to the listen position, it switches the operation of the speakers, and the speaker in the apartment becomes a speaker once again instead of being a microphone, but the speaker in the entrance directory turns into a microphone, so the pizza delivery guy can talk to the person in the apartment. So it's a microphone going this way, but this is a microphone going back that way, depending on the direction of the conversation. The 478 control amplifier is in charge of switching the direction back and forth between the apartment and the entrance. That's one of its primary jobs. If you have a building where no one, all 5 units, tell you that, no, we can't talk to the entrance, it hasn't worked in a long time, if you're looking for that one common source of a problem that would cause this, the thing you'll want to look at first is the speaker cone in the entrance directory. So here's my story about that, because I always have a story about everything. So last year, in 2016, I was called by a property management company, and they asked me if I could go look at an apartment house in San Rafael, California, that had 36 units in it, and they were having problems with the intercom system where the tenants couldn't speak or hear to the people at the entrance when someone came to buzz the units. And they said they had had another company come out and take a look at it, and the fellow looked at things for a few minutes and told them, oh, it's too old and it can't be fixed, and the only thing you can do is replace it, and quoted her an off the top of his head round number of about $8,000 to put in a new system. She, of course, was not very jazzed about that idea, and she started to hunt around, and she came up with us, and she asked me if I would be willing to go out and take a look at it, and I said, sure, why not? So she met me out there one afternoon, and it took me about 15 minutes to figure out what the problem was and solve the problem. And of course, the problem was the speaker cone in the entrance directory had died. It was mounted on the side of the building out in the weather, right on the sidewalk, and I would say the system was probably originally put in sometime in the mid-80s. And so let's say in round numbers it's almost 30 years old, and the speaker cone simply had rotted away. There was really not much paper left in it, and without a working speaker cone you don't have the ability to have two-way communication. If the resident pushes the talk button and speaks into their speaker, it can't come out here because the speaker has died. And if they push listen, you have a dead speaker. So if the pizza delivery guy tries to talk into this, it doesn't come out in the apartment because you have a dead speaker. So the problem was not an $8,000 problem. The problem was a $32 speaker cone problem, plus the service call, plus a little bit of time to check. I think we checked 6 or 8 apartments of people that were home that afternoon, because they didn't tell people I was necessarily coming to go in the apartments. So I do what I usually do, which is I buzz some people, we talk back and forth, I went to those apartments, checked things really quick. So all said and done, the entire thing was under $200 to solve the problem. And sometimes that's as simple as it is. I think last year I probably did a half a dozen service calls that were essentially the exact same thing. They were entry directory speaker cones that had failed because of age and from being outside in the weather. Another way you can easily test this is, if you remember how a 478 system operates, when someone pushes the button on the entrance directory to call apartment number 1, it creates a call tone in apartment number 1, and it also creates a call tone in the speaker at the entrance directory, so the visitor knows that the system has been activated, that it's actually working. If you go to a building and you push each of the buttons, and every single one of them creates a call tone in the appropriate speaker, button number 1 for speaker number 2, button number 2 for speaker number 2, button number 3 for apartment number 3, and so forth. And every one of those people, when you push the button, can hear the call tone in their station. But here's the but you don't hear the call tone at the entrance where you're standing there pushing the button. Guess what? It's because you've got a bad speaker cone 9 times out of 10. It would be very, very, very unlikely, because of the way the 478 amplifier is designed, for it to supply the call tone to the apartment but not to the entry. I'm not saying it's not impossible, but it's not very likely. The other thing that happens sometimes, which can create the same kind of problem, which we're not going to get into in this video, is if you have a broken wire between the speaker cone and the door speaker connections on the amplifier, that will create a problem with lack of communication also. But again, simplest problem, simplest solution, test the speaker cone. That's what it is. It's the most common call that we get. I hope this will help you. I hope that you will have learned something. There will be more videos about the 478 system coming up. You should really watch the first 2 videos. If you learned something here and it helps you with the problem you're trying to deal with, please give this video a thumbs up on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will be making more 478 apartment house intercom videos in the near future. And if you subscribe, you'll get notifications that there's a new video, and then you can watch that. If you have questions or you have specific problems or general problems with a 478 system, if you leave the questions in the comments down below, I will try to answer them. And if you have an idea for a topic on another problem with a 478 system, leave it in the comments and I'll try to incorporate that into a video also. These systems, it seems that there are less and less people around that work on these anymore, and that's why I decided to make these videos, so you can keep your systems working and save that all important $8,000. Anyway, that's all for today. See you on the next video.